Hello, Hammers! Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned so you're always up to date with the biggest Hammers stories. In recent days, the silence surrounding Graham Potter's situation at West Ham has drawn attention. Conversations about a possible dismissal have decreased considerably, at least regarding official information from the club. However, on social media, the scenario is very different. Speculations continue to pop up about who could take charge of the team in his place. Several names are mentioned as candidates, but when it comes to concrete information from the board, what reaches the public is extremely limited. Some believe it is the club itself fueling these rumors, indirectly leaking news about managers supposedly in line to take over. Others, however, understand that this time, the board prefers to remain silent out of respect for the current coach, letting the press and fans debate freely. Thus, theories and scenarios proliferate without any official confirmation. The general perception, even without a formal announcement, is that Potter's days are numbered. Most believe his departure is only a matter of time. It is no longer a question of if he will leave the club, but of when it will happen. Within this context, one name emerges strongly: Nuno Espirito Santo. Many consider him the main candidate to replace Potter. The most accepted explanation for the delay would be the termination process of Nuno with Nottingham Forest. While that issue remains unresolved, he would not be free to take on a new challenge. Despite this, other theories appear. Some say the board prefers to wait for the next matches since the team will face tough opponents away from home, such as Everton and Arsenal. The justification would be not to expose a new coach straight, away in 2 matches considered losable. For many, this idea makes no sense. Any coach willing to take on West Ham should be ready to face such challenges from the very first game. Another speculation circulates behind the scenes that the club's owner, David Sullivan, is planning to announce a new manager precisely in the match against Brentford, which is expected to draw strong fan protests. The logic would be simple. By bringing in a new coach, the club could weaken the boycott movement, as many fans would stop protesting to support the debut. This possibility divides opinions. Some believe Sullivan would follow such a strategy, others see it as too far-fetched. In any case, the current scenario points to Potter's continuation, at least until the match against Everton, and probably also against Arsenal. Only a very heavy defeat could immediately change this picture. Still, the question remains, what if Potter achieves good results in these 2 matches? Would he gain a reprieve until the end of the season? Some believe that 2 good performances could delay the manager's fall until at least the next international break in November. Another possible window would be during the Christmas period, although the Premier League does not stop then. The risk is that by waiting so long, other available names, like Nuno himself, may have already committed to other clubs. To complicate matters, there were rumors that Potter's contract included a specific termination clause at the end of the season, which would facilitate his exit. However, The Athletic reported that this does not exist. In other words, any dismissal would be costly for the club, as there are no contractual shortcuts to reduce financial compensation. As a result, if the board chooses to make a change, it will have to bear 2 costs: paying off Potter's exit and possibly compensating the club from which the new manager comes. This raises the hypothesis that Sullivan could, for the first time, invest in a currently employed coach, which would require paying a release clause as well. Although historically this has not been West Ham's practice, fan pressure may push the board to consider bolder alternatives. The great fear of supporters is to see the club repeat past mistakes, once again hiring only an available and unattached manager as a temporary solution. This kind of gamble may bring stability for 1 or 2 seasons, but ultimately leads West Ham back to the same point, without a defined project needing to change coaches again in the short term. Thus, Nuno's name continues to be seen as a plausible choice, though not necessarily one that would represent a major paradigm shift. Many compare him to David Moyes, believing he could bring some initial consistency, keep the team in the Premier League, and secure some solid results. However, in the medium term, his pragmatic style of play could become a problem, alienating fans and renewing criticism, exactly as has happened in other recent stints. This dilemma makes clear what part of the fan base has been asking for a long time: a long-term plan. The pressure is not only for immediate results, but for a strategy that gives the club an identity. The feeling is that without this, any coach who arrives will be limited to putting out fires rather than building a solid foundation. If the players know that the next coach will have backing to stay for years, perhaps the squad's response would be different. At the moment, confidence in Potter is low, and even before him there was distrust of other names. A manager supported by a project could extract more from the group. But if that does not happen, the question returns to the table: will Sullivan continue betting on stopgap solutions, or will he finally change his approach? Before we move on, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps the Claret and Blue family united and helps make West Ham stronger every single day. Among the names emerging as real alternatives to take charge of West Ham, three stand out: Andoni Iraola, current Bournemouth coach Oliver Glasner, in charge of Crystal Palace, and Marco Silva, responsible for Fulham. All of them are experiencing stable moments at their clubs and have contracts expiring in less than 1 year, which in theory could facilitate some sort of negotiation. The big question is why any of them would accept leaving the security they currently enjoy for the storm that has settled in London. Looking at Bournemouth, Palace, and Fulham, none of the three clubs are mired in crisis. On the contrary, they are relatively calm environments with competitive squads within their means and clear prospects for the season. West Ham, on the other hand, is going through a troubled moment with results below expectations, constant pressure from fans, and financial uncertainties. What could the London club offer that is so attractive for someone to leave stability for chaos? One of the strongest arguments would be the size of the fan base. Managing a club capable of attracting more than 60,000 people to the stadium, every match is a rare opportunity. The problem is that lately this unconditional support has not been evident. The stadium has become a stage for protests, and the usual enthusiasm of the crowd has disappeared. Thus, any manager who accepts the challenge would have to recover not only results, but also the emotional connection between the team and the fans. Another frequently mentioned point is West Ham's investment power in the transfer market. For years, the club sold the image that it could spend more than many of its direct mid-table rivals. However, this narrative no longer seems so solid. Just recall the last transfer window. West Ham spent approximately £140 million, including the obligation to permanently sign centre-back Jean-Claire Todibo. Even with this effort, the club managed to raise only about £85 million in sales, resulting in an unbalanced financial picture. When compared with other clubs, the difference is clear. Bournemouth under Iraola spent just over £130 million, but generated an impressive £238 million from player sales. Crystal Palace spent around £50 million and managed to sell for over £70 million. Fulham made only one significant signing of £40 million and still obtained £10 million in outgoing transfers. These numbers make it clear that although West Ham spends, its management lacks the same balance and ends up projecting financial fragility. It is true that hiring one of the three might not be too expensive in terms of release clauses, as their contracts are nearing the end. In Iraola's case, he is even said to be one of the lowest paid managers in the Premier League, earning between £1 million and £1.5 million per season. This means that to take him from Bournemouth, financial compensation would not be too high. On the other hand, it is obvious that by accepting the challenge of managing West Ham, he would demand a much higher salary, probably double or more than what he currently earns. In Potter's case, however, the calculation is much heavier. He still has 2.5 years left on his contract, valued at around £3 million per season. If the board decides to dismiss him now, it would have to pay close to £5 million in compensation. And it would still have to spend more to hire his replacement. In practice, the operation to change managers could easily exceed £6 or even £7 million, a significant amount for a club constantly complaining about financial difficulties. The characteristics of each candidate, however, are attractive. Marco Silva is recognized for proposing attacking football, valuing young players, and tactically adapting the team with flexibility. Iraola built his reputation through a high-pressing style that demands intensity and discipline, and even with limited resources, he managed to make his squads compete above expectations. Glasner, meanwhile, is a careful strategist, building solid defenses without stifling attacking creativity. In addition, he has collected recent trophies such as the FA Cup and the Super Cup, and secured European competition qualification, restoring enthusiasm to a club that seemed stagnant. Each of these profiles could deliver an immediate impact, and more importantly, point towards a long-term project, exactly what the fans have been demanding. The doubt is whether David Sullivan, the club's owner, will have the courage to abandon his usual policy of stopgap solutions and invest in something bolder. So far, West Ham has repeated the same formula, choosing available managers without termination costs, and hoping they can keep the team competitive for 1 or 2 seasons. The problem is that this model has already proven insufficient, and the cycle of instability has never been broken. If the choice falls on a long-term visionary coach, the message to the squad could be different. The players would realize that there is a clear plan, and this could directly influence performance on the pitch. Today, there is no confidence in Potter's work, just as there wasn't in previous names. The arrival of someone back to lead a project could transform this scenario. But if the new manager also fails, the question will return: what will be Sullivan's next step? The options seem clear. He could keep Potter until the end of the season, hoping he can somehow avoid relegation. He could sack him soon and bet on another quick fix, repeating the old practice of plugging holes. Or he could try something different and bring in a manager who serves not just for now, but also for the coming years. This last choice, however, requires money, courage, and a willingness to face more complicated negotiations. The scenario is delicate because every decision carries huge weight. Keeping Potter increases the risk of relegation. Betting on Nuno could guarantee stability, but possibly without inspiring the fans who would soon call for his departure. Pursuing a Raul Glasner or Marco Silva would be a break with the past, but also a financial and administrative challenge. The coming weeks will be decisive. Potter's future still depends on immediate results, but what is truly at stake is the direction West Ham wants to take as an institution. To continue insisting on temporary solutions, or finally to take the step, fans have long been asking for building a solid project with a clear identity capable of restoring hope to those who fill the stadium. Time is running out, and patience both on and off the pitch has already run out. And that's all for today's West Ham news. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with fellow fans, and of course subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Come on, you Irons.